All right. Today's date is Tuesday, June 9th, 2026. My name is Riley Gula, and I am here with Alyssa Broom-Webster. We are from the University of Central Florida's Bicentennial Exhibit Development Team and are interviewing Dr. Richard Crepeau, Professor Emeritus of History on UCF's main campus in Orlando, Florida. Over the course of a distinguished academic career spanning decades, Dr. Crepeau has explored the intersections of sport, culture, society, and history through his teaching, research, and public scholarship. In the lead up to the United States Bicentennial 50 years ago, he and his students managed to put together a notable collection of historical junk that is now serving as artifacts that speak to the United States' sense of national identity then and now as we prepare to celebrate the country's semi-quincentennial. Since 1976, this collection has been carefully housed between UCF's Special Collections and the University Archives, UCF's History Department, and Dr. Crepeau himself. Today, we'll discuss Dr. Crepeau's work in 1976 to collect everyday items celebrating the bicentennial in July of that year. I am interviewing Dr. Crepeau as part of an oral history collection for the Bicentennial Junk exhibition with the University of Central Florida. Dr. Crepeau, will you please begin by telling me your full name?
Richard Crepeau.
Perfect.
Okay.
Let's see. We'll begin with some preliminary questions. Sure. When and where did you grow up?
I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Born in 1941. Was there until I finished college at the University of Minnesota. A week later, I left for Peace Corps training at UCLA. And 10 weeks later, I was in Ethiopia.
Wow.
As a Peace Corps volunteer.
Awesome. What are some of your research interests?
Well, I'd say that basically it's been sport and modern popular culture. I did a PhD dissertation on baseball, which was for its time extremely unusual. History departments did not look kindly on sport topics for PhDs. But I had a major professor whose name was Bill Miller, who I studied under at both at Marquette for the master's and at FSU for the PhD. And he was open to a lot of different things. He was actually a religious historian. And I talked to him once. I said, there's this, I have this idea that maybe we could do something with baseball and culture. And I have a strong interest in the 20s and 30s. And sort of put all that together and see maybe if something can happen. And I said, it seemed to me that initially what I would do would be look at the Sporting News, which was the publication from the late 19th century until, well, the early 21st century in St. Louis. And they covered every single game in that period and had columnists and so on. So it was a great source. And I said, I could, and these are available on microfilm. So I could go back and I could go through every season and every game if I wanted to from that period. So he said, well, why don't you give it a look and see how it comes out? So I got the microfilm and I spent about a week in the basement of the FSU library in the microfilm reader office or area. And after about a week, I went back to him. I said, this is going to work. This is a gold mine. And he said, okay, go for it. And that's how I got started into sport history. When I finished the PhD, and the degree was granted in 73, I think. I wasn't sure that sport history was going to be an area that A, that I could get a job in, and B, that it would be considered a legitimate field of study or of research, because there wasn't much out there. Turns out there were about 4 or 5 other people in the same situation I was at different places around the country. Wow. We all got to know one another later and traded notes about this. All became fairly well-known sport historians of one kind or another. So I was looking around for something else to do outside of sport, and I came across a story about a small community called Melbourne Village, which sits down next to or between I-95 and Melbourne.
Okay.
And it's a small community, or if you want Melbourne and West Melbourne, and it's sort of nestled between them. It's a small community. It was started by three women from Ohio who had worked together during the Depression in Dayton, Ohio, on something that was called a homesteading project. And it was a New Deal operation, and there was a lot of interest in it, and there were other homesteading things that were done around the country. But these women, after their experience in Dayton, and once the Depression ended, the war came. At the end of the war, they said, "What can we do now? What can we do with this? Is there some other way to deal with this sort of thing, to give people an opportunity to supplement their incomes in case another depression comes?" And I think one of the things people forget about the end of the war was a lot of people were fearful that the depression was going to return in 1945, 46, which it did not, of course, for a number of reasons. But at any rate, so they decided they would look into this. They had some contacts with some people in homesteading operations. They met somebody who was a real estate dealer in Florida, and was also involved in the homesteading businesses. And he said to them, I've got this place near Melbourne, Florida, that would be perfect for you. Why don't we all go down and we'll look at it and see what we can do?" And that was how it began. And it was supposed to be a very intentional community with particular, they had a sort of bylaws and rules and so on. Eventually they set up a government. There was a government of what was called the American Homesteading Foundation, and then a government of Melbourne, which came a little bit later, of Melbourne Village. But at any rate, the thing did grow. It changed quite a bit over time, although it still keeps the same character to some degree. I was down there a few months ago to give a talk. It was the 40th anniversary
Oh, awesome.
of the founding of it. I got an email from somebody down there, and I hadn't thought about the place in years. I had to go back and reread my own book about 3 times to get ready to talk. And so that's was the next main project. And as I was working on that, I started dabbling in other small things, trying to come up with articles from the PhD dissertation that might get published. And I had a couple of those did. And then I reworked the manuscript and wound up being published as a book. And that's how I then really sort of settled into sport history.
Gotcha.
And the field grew, and of course it grew rather slowly at first, and then it took off. And the key to its growth, as you'll like this, the key to the growth is that history departments figured out that as the demand for numbers in classes, student bodies, the body count became an important part of funding in universities. They figured out you could get a really good body count with a sport history class.
Yeah.
And that's why it came to be accepted. Now it's taught in any number of universities, and it has spun off subfields of the sports business was founded. That operation was founded by somebody who was one of the founders of the sport history group at University of Massachusetts. So it was interesting how all that grew, and but that's how I got involved in it, and that's how I managed to stay in it. And then the last big project I did in my career was to do history, a sort of a generalized history of the National Football League.
Wow.
And that was published now probably 15 years ago. There was a second edition done when the 50th anniversary of the NFL came up a few years later. So that's how I got involved in all that.
That's awesome.
And that's where the career led me. And it was perfect because I loved dealing in sport and I loved dealing in history. I couldn't have found a better combination of things.
Mhm. Well, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Tell us a
Probably too
bit.
much, but
Well, no, that's good.
Yeah.
How did this sort of influence your interest in bicentennial history? Like, how did we go from
Well,
sport history?
how do we go to that? Well, I really wasn't, I mean, I really wasn't just sort of buried in sport history. I did a lot of teaching of social and intellectual history. And I taught the 20s and 30s course all the time that I was here. and I was interested in pop culture. So all of those interests were sort of together. And it just happened that when the bicentennial came up, and I've told this story before, we were traveling. Turns out it was the summer of 75, probably late summer, and stopped. The story is, and I think this is right, they stopped at the Howard Johnson for lunch. The family was with us. And the kids' menus were you could turn them into, fold them up and turn them into tricorner hats. I think we have one of those somewhere. And I think the menu was on it as well. Uh, and I looked at that, and then I'm looking at placemats, and then I start seeing lots of these little sorts of things around, and I'm thinking, this could be a thing.
Yeah.
We may have a thing here. And so the rest of that summer, I saw a lot more of this stuff. And so when classes started in the fall, I talked at the beginning of each class, I said, I've noticed this about the coming bicentennial. There seems to be a lot of sort of junky kinds of things that are appearing to celebrate the bicentennial. The tri-cornered hat at the Howard Johnson's being prime example. But there are all kinds of different things. And I say, if you see any of this stuff, bring it in, I'll take it, and we'll build a collection. And I didn't think that much of that, how much that might bring. But then students started seeing stuff and grabbing it and bringing it in, and it just grew and grew and grew and grew. And that continued then through 76, when more new stuff was coming up. And that's how the collection really came together. And it was massive, as it turned out.
Yes.
And some of it is pretty interesting. Some of it is just no more than like a newspaper clipping about something. A lot of it is advertising based, promotional based. A lot of it is very consciously designed to make an identification with a product or an event and the patriotic world. Then there were the odd pieces. All of the popular skin magazines produced a bicentennial issue. Playboy, Penthouse, Hustler, all of them had a bicentennial issue. Well, we don't need to go into the detail. The one thing they all had in common was that they all argued for the First Amendment and freedom of the press, and that the bicentennial should be celebrated for freedom of the press, and that meant freedom for them to publish whatever they wanted. And so you had that sort of strain of things. Sports teams started producing little things they give giveaways at games. I have some, I think some stuff from the Minnesota Twins that were glassware.
Oh, yes.
And then there were plates, lots of plates that were given out, and trays, and that sort of thing. And then just wrappers on bubble gum, wrappers on candy, wrappers on cookies, wrappers on or cereal boxes, all of that kind of stuff. It just kept coming, and I kept thinking, well, certainly there can't be anything that's going to top all of this. Until one Friday afternoon, I got a phone call from a student. And I can't remember who the student was. I got to try to track this person down. And he said, Dr. Crepeau, guess what? And guess what I found? I said, well, I certainly can't guess, but tell me. He said, well, I was traveling, I was coming back from Tampa, driving back, and I stopped at a gas station around Lakeland, and I went in to use the bathroom. And in there was a machine with condoms in it. And he said, and I looked at that and I saw in the machine, there was a bicentennial condom. I thought, well, this has got to be the top thing. I mean, nothing's going to top this. And I don't think anything ever did top. Turns out that there was somebody else had a collection. There was a story in the New York Times not too long ago about a collection, I think at Yale. And in that collection, the condom is in that collection as well. So it became a very popular marker for that stuff. So that's how all of this came together and how it grew and developed. I don't know how many students, contributed. I would guess well over 100. Because it went on for at least 4 or 5 semesters, and probably I was teaching 110, 120 students a semester. So, you know, and lots of stuff came in all the time, and of course we got enormous numbers of duplicates and that sort of thing as well.
Would you tell us a little bit more about some of the artifacts, some of your favorites?
Oh,
How funny stories of how you came to get them?
oh, that one was the condom was
Yes.
of course, my favorite.
Yes.
The other really great piece, and I've seen there's a lot of stuff online about this as well, is the 7-Up cans. The 7-Up produced a bottle that had the 1976, 1996 dates on it, or 19, excuse me, 1770, 1976. But they also produced a set of cans, the canned 7-Up. And each can had on one side of it a state, an outline of the state, the name of the state, and a couple of things about it. Then on the back side were little tiny 7-Ups, 7-Up, 7-Up, 7-Up. And this was really a computer printout method at the time. And they were in 3 colors, red, white, and blue. And it was set up so that if you took the cans and you arrange them in a certain way, on the front side, you see all the states, but on the back side, you'd see Uncle Sam in red, white, and blue. That was really amazing. But what is the most interesting thing about that, I think, at least from my point of view, was trying to get all the states. We had 10 million different Florida cans, of course. But there were, and I don't remember what states held out and which ones came last, but we got down to about 4 or 5 we still didn't have, and this was getting pretty late in the game. And so we start looking at trash cans. And I had at one point, my son mentioned this last night. In fact, he remembers looking for the cans. He didn't mention what he didn't mention about looking at the cans. At one time, he was climbing into dumpsters to see if there were any cans in them, and we found 1 or 2 that way. And that's how we finally completed the collection.
Wow.
But we never went out and bought a 7-Up to do it. It was all stuff that came in. And that was, to me, that was the other really great piece, is that one.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What were some of the students' feelings towards collecting the bicentennial items? Do you remember any of their interactions or of their?
Well, no,
Yeah.
just the one, the phone
Yeah.
call I got. But I just remember people would come in and they'd be like very excited about what they had. And, I got this from my father saw this and he picked it up, or my sister ran into this somewhere and she grabbed it. So it reached out beyond the classroom. And the students were quite enthusiastic about it. And then I reached out. I got a number. The reason there's several Minnesota Twins things in the collection is that my father was working in the press box at the Metrodome in Minneapolis. I think it was in the Metrodome at that point. It was still working, or was he just still working? I don't remember when he retired. But he worked for Wilson Sporting Goods. The Twins were one of his accounts. So he was well connected to the Twins and to people in the Twins organization. So they were doing giveaways. And the glassware was one of those giveaways. And he would just pick extra ones up for me for everyone they did. And then when he came down for the winter, or he would mail them or bring them down. And I have scorecards from games with the symbols on it and that sort of thing. So that stuff from the Twins was as a result of his connection to the Minnesota Twins in his retirement. So it just, things came from everywhere and nowhere. It was just remarkable.
Have you seen any similarities between the artifacts from the bicentennial versus 50 years later, the semi-quincentennial?
I think the one similarity is there are commercial tie-ins,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of that, and more and more commercials on television are referencing it, and I think maybe a little more than in those days. I'm not sure of that. The great difference, of course, is that 50 years ago there was no internet,
Right.
and there wasn't that kind of communication. And so when you, now you can put an ad up on the internet and reference the bicentennial. You couldn't do that 50 years ago. And so if you were going to reference the bicentennial for your product, you either had to do it with a television commercial or a print ad, or some kind of giveaway. And so it's a much more, tactile
Right.
material than in those days than there is now. I don't see as much of that sort of thing. And maybe, we're still we're now what, only about a month, but maybe there'll be more, but I haven't seen much. And I've been surprised by that.
Do you think historians in 50 years that are looking back at the semi-quincentennial will have issues with looking at the internet and finding stuff related to it?
I don't know. I mean, they're gonna have to look there. The question is, will the technology allow you to look back 50
Right.
years? I don't, the technologies of the internet change every week. It seems like,
Yeah.
well, every few months, every couple of years, and initially very rapidly it kept changing and still changes, quite often, and computer systems change. Your ability to access change, and what's available online keeps growing. So yeah, they're gonna have to look at it, and they're gonna have to find the technology to do so. I knew somebody who worked at the National Archives, and they had one unit at the National Archives where all they were doing was trying to catalog everything and keep it accessible by updating, by moving it into new formats so that they could access it with current technology. And that was a full-time job. There were like a lot of people in an office doing nothing but that on a daily basis.
Yep.
So interesting.
Very. So are there any items that you wish you would have saved for the collection that you didn't?
Oh, I don't know. I wish I had. We have one, what's the whiskey bottle?
Oh,
What's the whiskey? Do
the
you,
Liberty one?
no, it's the one that has the Norman Rockwell painting on it. I have one, and it's the one with the umpire, and it's a very famous Rockwell painting. No game today, and the umpire's standing in front of the dugout, and rain is hitting his head. No game today, game rain. And that was a famous Rockwell painting, but there were 5 of those, and I wish I had all 5. And I could, if I wanted to spend a few $1,000s, I can get the rest of them, because you can get them online. People are selling them on eBay and other places, anywhere from $75 to $200 or $300 a piece. But we have the one, and it would be nice to have all. But no, I mean, I can't think of anything else that got away that I really wanted. But then the memory is not what it once was, as they say.
Right. How do you compare the feelings of interest in American identity from 1976 to 2016 when you did the interview with Knowles and 2026?
It's hard to make the comparison to today, because I'm not actively teaching. I'm not on campus. I don't have a lot of interaction with students. I don't have a lot of interaction with the same kind of range of people that I did then. So you're essentially, you retire and you become a bit more isolated from that whole range of people and things that you had contact with. So it's hard to make that comparison. And so I won't try.
Good point.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's talk a bit more about some of the artifacts that you're seeing like today, some of the stuff in 2026 that you're seeing out and about.
Yeah, most of the stuff I'm seeing, I don't see much in terms of things that I can pick up and take away. But I see stuff online every day. There are 2 major committees. One that's, I think it's run out of the maybe out of the National Archives, but another, or just a committee that was set up nationally. Then there is a presidential committee, a Donald Trump committee. Because there has to be a Donald Trump committee,
Right.
so that Donald Trump's name can be on it. So there are these two different committees. They're producing stuff. I get, there's one is called America 250, I think. And I get an email, one or two emails a day from them promoting something. Mostly they're selling stuff. But they also then are highlighting events that are coming up, particularly events that are around the 4th of July and in DC, or events in other state capitals that are taking place. Fireworks explosions, the usual sort of 4th of July stuff. And but that's about, I can't really think of stuff that I could say, oh, here's a piece of
Right.
stuff, you
Right.
know?
We've seen a couple of
have ya?
things. Dr. French has brought in a couple of
Yeah.
things. Mainly what I've seen is the Coca-Cola. They
Yeah.
came out with cans.
Right, yeah, they have the Coke cans.
But
Yeah, I did see.
similar as the 7-Up cans.
No, they don't do anything other than, although they are set by state, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they don't have that extra
No.
dimension to
No,
them.
they don't.
They're not that kind of, I must do this as a collectible kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Everything I've seen as well, in your collection, I've seen things that are like everything is framed Bicentennial. It has Bicentennial
Yeah.
written all over it. Whereas this stuff is what you said, America 250.
Yeah, well, nobody wants to say Bicentennial.
Exactly, exactly.
No,
Semi-quincentennial.
And I still can't say it. So.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's kind of the stuff we've noticed
Yeah,
from.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Cool. Is there anything that we haven't discussed yet that you think you'd like to touch on?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay, cool. Are you excited to see the exhibit in the
I
library?
am. I'm very excited to see it.
Awesome.
And that, when do you know when that's going to go up?
It's going up. We are working on it. We're actually going to the library on Thursday to
Uh-huh.
get stuff going for it,
Uh-huh.
and then it'll be live on July 5th.
July 5th.
Yeah,
Okay,
in the
great.
library. Yep.
Terrific.
Yeah.
I'll be there.
Oh, great. Well, we're excited to
Yeah.
have you there.
No, this is exciting, and you've done really a great job of
Thank
putting
you.
all this together.
Thank you. Yeah, we're working on a digital
Yeah.
exhibit, and we're working
Right.
on
Yeah, I've seen some of the, the emails that come around about that.
yeah. Your
What you
favorite,
do.
the condom will be there.
It has to be. It has to be.
Yes. Well, thank you, Dr. Crepeau, for being here and speaking with us today, and thank you for putting together this collection. We couldn't have had the Bicentennial Junk exhibit
Yes.
without you.
Yeah, some people don't like the term junk, but
Yeah.
I don't know why. It is. I mean, what do you call it? The Bicentennial ephemera?
Exactly.
No, junk.
It's
Come on,
junk.
let's say what it is.
Yes.
Let's not cover it with a nice word.
Mhm. And it's still valuable. It's valuable.
Yeah, it is valuable, and will become more so.
Mhm.
But there's that collection at Yale, and I think the National Archives has a big collection as well. But as far as I know, those are the only ones. I had, at the time we were doing this, I heard from someone that there was a professor at the University of Rochester or Buffalo, I'm not sure which, that was doing it as well, but I've not seen any references to that again. So I don't know. Anyway,
And we are asking Dr. Crepeau to talk a little bit about a really interesting video that was captured for the Bicentennial Junk exhibit in 2000 and
it was done, it was the video was, the video is from 1976.
1976.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was interesting, the collection got a little bit of play in local media, I think Channel 9 did a piece on it, the Sentinel did a piece on it. And one day I got a call from Miami, and it was the public TV station in Miami. And they said, well, we've seen some things about your Bicentennial collection. We wondered if we could bring Gene Shepherd to have a look at it and use it and comment on it. Well, I would guess that a number of people might not have known who Gene Shepherd was, but I did, and I had read a number of his things and seen his some of his films and so on. And so I was really excited. Of course you're going to break Jim. So they flew him down. He flew down one day from New York. I met him at the hotel. We talked a bit about the collection. And then the next morning I picked him up and brought him over to the campus. And he came to my office, which was about the size of a closet. And we laid some of the stuff out on my desk and a few other things. And he just started going through the material. Uh, He'd look at this one, he'd look at that, and then he'd set one aside, put one over here. And he went through everything I had. And he picked out what he thought was usable and most interesting. He had a guy with him who was an assistant, and his cameraman. And he told the person to take this material. We had a room picked out where they could do the filming. And they went over and they set all of the material up on boards. So there were maybe 4 or 5 boards. And they were in different categories. There was the food category and the advertising category and this category and that category. And that was set up. Sometime in the afternoon then, the assistant said, it's ready. And so I walked over, a couple of us walked over with Gene to the room. And he walked in and he looked at all the stuff on the board, sort of walked through it, took a look at it, and then walked back to the first board and he said to assistant, okay, let's go. And they turned the camera on and he started. And nonstop, no script. And it runs what, 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Around 20 minutes with no script. And he does this just brilliant commentary on the material. Filled with jokes and puns and just some other just really sharp observations. And at the end, of course, he concludes it with, he said, of course, this being America, we knew that at some point it had to come to this. And he held up the condom, Bicentennial condom, and then the Skid magazines. And he made a number of jokes about all of that. But it was just this brilliant, brilliant piece. So that was the filming. And then so that was it. And he left, went back to New York. And they eventually took the film, and then Gene went down to Miami, to the public TV station there. They had a studio audience, pretty good sized studio audience. And they introduced Gene, and he came out, and the theme was how America is celebrating its bicentennial. And they showed the audience the video, which got a very good response from the audience. And then they began a discussion about what does this tell us about how Americans are celebrating? Is this something uniquely American, or just what might it be? So it was an amazing piece, and we have that video, luckily, still in our possession, although it's been transformed. The original now is on a DVD that's hard plastic.
Yep.
Something no one would recognize. We had it transferred to, I think we had it transferred to a DVR first, and then eventually to a DVD.
DVD, yeah.
And there are few copies of those around, but some of it's been lost. But at least we have.
What were some of the interactions with Gene like? Do you remember a specific conversation or?
No, I mean, we talked about a lot of different things, about a lot of his work. I was very familiar with him and very familiar with the specific books that he had done and pieces that he had done for National Public Television, or the Corporation of Public Broadcasting. There was a series on the national NPR TV called Gene Shepherd's America. And those are brilliant. And some of those you can find them, you can Google and find them. There's one, he did one on beer that was just remarkable. He did another one on Lou Gehrig, the baseball player. I have a copy of that somewhere. And I think he did one on railroads. These sort of institutions that were typically American, or typically American of a certain time and place. The beer one is the most brilliant, I think, of all. And probably the Bicentennial one comes as close to the brilliance of the beer one as anything else that he's done. But he was an interesting person. He did radio, and radio was really his favorite medium. He did some television, as I mentioned. But he did radio, and he did a nightly radio show in New York on WOR where he came on and for a couple of hours he would talk. No script, he'd just start talking and about whatever he felt like talking about. And he had a very big audience. I know people in New York who listened to him as often as they possibly could. The one thing that many people might know him from is the film The Christmas Story.
Okay.
The Christmas Story is based on a short story that he did. And if you've seen the movie, there's a scene in the movie where the little kid goes to visit Santa Claus. And Santa Claus's helper is a kind of a crotchety guy.
Right.
That's Gene Shepherd. He appeared in that one part as the Santa Claus's helper. But that was his creation. I mean, that was his short story. He has a number of really great stories. He published a lot actually in Playboy. A lot of his short stories were done there. There's a terrific one about a teenager on his first date, which is brilliant as well. Anybody who'd ever been a teenager would appreciate it. And that includes most people. Most people were teenagers at one time.
Yep, most of us.
Yeah. Anyway, so he had this eye for the ordinary. And then he not only had the eye for the ordinary, but he had the ability then to talk about it and describe it and point out what you might otherwise not point out.
Right.
I heard somebody the other day talking about painting and how some people can look at a painting and they see the painting. Other people look at a painting and they see all kinds of things in the painting that just as you look at it casually, you would never notice. Well, he had that ability to look at the culture and see things that not everybody else saw until he points them out. And then you say, yeah, of course, he's right. So that makes, I think that makes that piece of the Bicentennial stuff really special.
And did you get any sort of PR, or did the Bicentennial exhibit have any fans reach out, or did anything kind of come from?
Not really,
No?
no, I never, other than, people in town knew about it because they saw something on TV or saw something on paper. And I knew, people would ask me about it occasionally. The one thing I'd really like to do at this stage, if it's possible, is to figure out a way to sort of message the alumni and say, do any of you remember these? Were you here in the 70s?
Right.
Do you remember, did you maybe, were you in one of these classes? Do you remember getting something yourself? I would love to know who got the condom. I have a couple of ideas, and I'm going to send them emails to a couple of people that are former students, but I don't know if they were in those classes then or not. But that's something I've been going to do.
Yeah, please do. That'd be really cool to find out.
But if we have some kind of connection with the Alumni Association, if they could put a note in a newsletter. Do you remember this, or were you one of the persons who brought something in? I mean, it would really be great to.
Yeah, or we could even, like, when we promote the exhibit.
Right,
like,
and
send it to the Alumni Association, because in the exhibit, we have a form.
Yeah, okay.
Where they can like fill out, was this.
Yes,
Stuff like that.
yeah,
So maybe we send
yeah,
it
that would be great.
promote the exhibit.
Sure. Okay,
Okay,
great.
cool.